Numerous people, as college football continues to evolve and change, have put together ideas or proposals about how the game can improve. Well, right here on today's episode of Locked On Buckeyes, we have Jay Crawford from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show here to give us a proposal about how he thinks the sport can improve. And let me tell you guys, it makes a lot of sense.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, May 30th in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will be joined by Jay Crawford of WKYC in Cleveland and from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. This is the second time the third, honestly, that Locked On Buckeyes and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show have collided. We've had Adam the Bull, one of the personalities you can catch on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show right here on the podcast. I have made an appearance on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and today, Jay Crawford, one of the personalities you can enjoy every single day on that show, is here with us today. Some of you will recognize Jay's name or Jay's face or his voice from his days at ESPN, working on Cold Pizza, First Take, and even Sports Center. I am excited and happy to have Jay Crawford here, and I do believe this is the first time I have done a show with someone that has the same name as myself. So, guys, on this Memorial Day, let's enjoy a fun conversation with two men named Jay, and trust me, you will love Jay's proposal about how college football can improve and get better because, like I said earlier, it makes a lot of sense. And joining us now, here on Locked On Buckeyes, it is one of the personalities you can enjoy every single day on YouTube. It's Jay Crawford. He is one of the co-hosts that is a part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Jay, before I go any further, I think this is the first time I have done a show with someone that has the same first name as me. So we can make it the Jay and Jay Show, a spinoff of Mike and Mike. But Jay Crawford, welcome to the show, man. I'm really glad you're here.
Jay, thanks for having us, man. It's good to be with you.
Your show, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, you have done a show similar to this. It's been some time since you did a show that was as free-flowing, as laid-back, as sports variety as this one. What drew you to add this to your busy schedule and be one of the personalities that's on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show?
I'll tell you, I've never done a show that's this relaxed, laid-back, and free-flowing. We tried to do that with Cold Pizza and even with First Take, and both of those shows were. But I've never done a show that is this laid back, and it literally is like we're just sitting around a man cave watching or talking about sports. We there's nothing off limits. We talk about the same things that you would talk with if you're together with three of your buddies and you're talking about sports. We do the exact same thing. And what really drew me to it, to answer your question, was the cast of folks that they had put together, with Adam, who is a local guy here in Cleveland and has done a terrific job on talk radio here for the last 11 years. He's always number one in drive time, which is tough to do for a sports show. But once I heard he was involved, and G. Bush, and then we've got a rotating fourth chair that goes between Brad Sellers and Tyvis Powell comes in with us on Wednesdays. We've got a local comedian, sports fan, observationist, and Mike Polk on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm floored every day how fast the 2 hours go, because it literally is four guys sitting around just talking sports, and we have a blast. Nothing's off limits, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
It is fun. It's enjoyable. Even one of my good friends started watching the show because they're Cleveland sports fans, so they love it. But then every single day it's something different. And I like the variety. I like the humor, but I do find it's hard to get a group of four individuals, doesn't matter if it's men or women, that can mesh and gel and that can quickly build chemistry, as well as you four, well, 5 or 6 or however many guys are there at that time, as quickly as you guys have built the chemistry, I think it's been a great sign of growth and a great sign of great things to come.
Yeah, Jay, you're astute because I've done a lot of different launches in my career. I'm currently, my day job is I host a 5 o'clock show on NBC3 here in Cleveland. And I've launched Cold Pizza and First Take at ESPN. And I launched a show in Columbus years ago with Kirk Herbstreit on WBNS Channel 10 there called Wall to Wall Sports. Now, Kirk and I had experience. I had chemistry already because we had, played sports together when, before we started the show. But with this crew, the one thing that blew my doors off from day one when we came in here and started rehearsing, it felt like we had known each other our whole lives and we had just met. And so, and I think that I had said from the beginning, the key to this show being good is if we're having fun, the audience will have fun, and that means they'll come back. And we've had tremendous success with strong numbers every day that get bigger every day. The beauty about, so in TV, you're guessing what the ratings are. It's not a science. You think but you don't really know because it's an inexact measurement science that they use to really kind of project on a small sample size what number they think is actually watching. Well, with YouTube, the second you're done, we know exactly how many viewers we had today, what our average number was, how many minutes they spent collectively watching us, how many minutes the average viewer stayed tuned in. And all of those metrics have been far greater than any of us expected that would be this early. And I go back to what I thought was key from the beginning. We got to have fun. We've got to have chemistry, and we have it. We have it naturally, and we genuinely like each other, which is very important. And I think that's kind of the selling point right now. We're all in this together, man. Being a Cleveland sports fan ain't easy, bro. I'm going to tell you right now. And so that's the one thing that we have. I always tell people I'm 190 pounds of pure scar tissue because that's what's happened rooting for these teams my whole life.
You got the Browns, got the Cavs, the Guardians. You got
bro.
Luckily,
Buckeyes, man.
That's it. Like everyone in Northeast Ohio is like, well, we got all these pro teams that really are kind of crazy outside of the Cavs. And when LeBron was there, the Cavs have not been that team. You got the Buckeyes who really dominate a lot of the conversation, but you guys do a great job. And I do know how hard it is with a sports-centric, a sports-centered town like Cleveland in Northeast Ohio. I understand how hard it is to try to mix in everything. Browns heavy, or is it going to be Guardians heavy, or is it Cavs heavy? Is it Buckeyes heavy? You got to play the hits. And even though early on, I keep going back to this is the infancy of the show, playing the hits is not hard for you. And it's not just like you guys playing the hits. It's also everybody's comfortable talking about everything going on in the area.
Yeah, and that's the key. So we have once a week contributors like Joe Thomas comes on once a week. Tim Couch comes on once a week. These are all big name former Cleveland athletes that have committed to doing the show. We've got a long list of people. Aditi Kinkwala, who is an NFL Network reporter until recently. She's about ready to take a new job. She comes in with us once a week. So we're constantly changing the scenery. So the four of us can chew on a topic for 20 minutes, and then we can bring Joe Thomas in, and he might have a completely different perspective. So I think that also kind of helps keep the ball moving. But to your point of playing the hits, like this is a Browns town, man. It always has been, and it always will be. When the Indians are playing great, they'll go nuts for the Indians. And when the Cavs were winning, they'll go nuts for the Cavs. But this is a Browns town when they were 0-16.
Yeah.
And most NFL cities, if your team's 0-16, you can't find fans with a GPS.
No.
But here in Cleveland, we know what it's like. We've been through the long losing seasons, and we're all holding on, waiting for the climactic finish when we get to a Super Bowl. And because we never know when that might be, you got to invest heavily in every season because you want to be a big part of it. So the hits here are the Cleveland Browns. Now, fortunately, they give us a lot to talk about. There's never a shortage of drama, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson or Jadeveon Clowney coming back, like OBJ, Jarvis Landry. There's always a lot of good soap opera storylines here. And, it makes it hard in the summer when we have to ride those storylines, knowing we're 4 months away from an actual game. But the fans don't seem to mind, and they're watching the Browns content. So we just keep giving them what they want.
You mentioned something with the Browns that I know Browns fans have been hoping for decades. I'm not exaggerating. Literally for a decade. That's bringing a Super Bowl to Cleveland. The national championship in college football is something that not many teams can even have a chance at winning. Now, there are 130, I do believe, FBS level football teams. Over half of those know going in. Well, really, you can go higher than that. At least half of those know going into it. They're playing football. They're not going to have a chance to win. Another like 20% or whatever percentages are going to be off, but about 25% on top of that, they're going to be competitive. But they also know they're not going to win. But they can win 7 games, 8 games, and be satisfied with that. Ohio State's different. The culture at Ohio State from Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Ryan Day, the culture is win. And it's not just win 10 games, win 11 games. It's bring that national championship. The Super Bowl that Cleveland Browns fans want Cleveland to bring to Cleveland, the Buckeyes fans know. It's not just they want the Buckeye football team to bring a national championship to Columbus. They know that Ohio State can. So one thing that the Browns fans hope, there's a belief in Columbus that this is the year that Ryan Day wins his first national championship.
Yeah, and Jay, so the difference between, and I know because I've been a lifelong fan, and I also worked in Columbus for 5 years, so I know how that city operates and what their mentality is. The difference between being an Ohio State football fan and just say a Browns fan or even the Indians or Guardians or Cavs, with all of the Cleveland sports teams, you have a prayer that they can win a title. And it really has just been a prayer. I'm 56 years old. In my entire lifetime, 3 professional sports teams. That's over 165 professional sports seasons. I've seen 1 championship. 1. The Indians and Guardians haven't won in my lifetime. They came close twice. Both times were extra inning Game 7 losses. I was at both games covering them. The Cavs finally got over the hump in 2016. The Browns, the last year, the year before I was born, the year before the Super Bowl became a thing, the Browns were world champs. But no one remembers that because it wasn't called the Super Bowl.
No.
And I wasn't even here. So when you're rooting for the Cleveland teams, you have a hope and a prayer that maybe this will be the season. But with the Buckeyes, you start every season like, this better be another season where you get another ring. Because in my lifetime, I've been lucky enough to see the Buckeyes win 3 national championships. So you know that there's a strong likelihood it could happen. In most of the years of my adult life, with the exception of 2 or 3, I believe there was a pretty good chance going into the season that we could. I mean, in the Luke Fickell season, we knew that it was going to be a rebuilding year.
Right.
But when was the last time the Buckeyes had a rebuilding year?
Right.
Like, they don't happen. And so every year when they break camp, you look at the roster and you're like, hey, if things break our way, it could happen again. And in Cleveland, you say, man, things are really going to have to break our way for us to even have a chance to win once.
The Buckeye fans believe, and there is an adjustment period for every coach. I talk about Jim Tressel a lot because he was the coach when I became a fan of Ohio State, and he had to adjust from the time he became the head coach until the time that he was abruptly removed for things that we will not talk about today. Urban Meyer had to adjust from his days at Utah to Florida to Ohio State. I think we have quickly seen Ryan Day adjust in only a 3-year span from his introduction being the head coach at Ohio State to the way he's handled the transfer portal, the way he's handled NIL, the way he's handled all this change. College football, we get coaches, the great ones. They know how to adjust and they know how to change. But college football has been changing for decades. And I know I'm not going to go back into my whole history of college football, but there's been a culture of change that we have seen for quite a long time with conference realignment. You have transfer portal stuff, NIL stuff. You have other things going on with coaches fighting. Will coaches fighting? Will that change things? This culture of change that we're in right now, I think it feels different than what it did in the 90s or in the 80s or in 2000s, bringing the BCS in, and then they added a game to the BCS, and then the implementation of the playoff. They're going to be changing the playoff here very soon. What we've experienced over the past couple of years, it's really kind of mirrored our society. As things keep changing, as things keep moving, we could drastically see a different version of college football that's better or worse. I don't know where you stand with that, but this culture of change in Ryan Day and Ohio State, they have to quickly adjust, because if you don't, Buckeye fans and that belief they have to bring a national championship back to Columbus, that could go out of the window, because as college football changes, if the coach does not change and move with college football, this Buckeye team might not be the Buckeye team we know and want it to be.
The one thing that I always have faith in is that Ohio State is always going to figure out the playing field and the rules. I know they're going to always be ahead of the curve, because the administration there knows that Ohio State University is the university it is because of what the football team has done. And I don't mean to take anything away from the institution, the academic institution, but let's face it. When you look at these powerful sports programs, the historically powerful, dominant football programs, most of these universities are what they are because of their football teams. They really are. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but this is a case where the tail is wagging the dog. And I know Ohio State understands that, because they've thrived throughout the decades of change. And so they're looking at the rules and they're figuring out, like everybody else in real time, how is this going to work? How do we capitalize and monetize the NIL? What's the best proposal to make sure that we remain dominant? One of the things I saw is, I don't know where this proposal came from, but I think it was from Gene Smith, but I think I saw a plan recently that said they're going to pay all of their athletes, tennis players, golf, everybody, a certain amount that was over and above what their scholarship is. Well, that's a fascinating concept, because the NIL model, you're going to have these teams that are spending an inordinate amount of money on 3 or 4 players, or in Texas Tech's case, a lot of their players. If you've got a large booster pool of money, you can pay all the football players. But I think what Ohio State is doing is saying, we believe strength in numbers. We believe that you win championships not with your 3 or 4 superstars, but with all of the other moving parts around them. And if we tell all the athletes in all the prospective sports, we're going to pay you this to come to Ohio State, and then whatever else you can gain on the NIL front, that's up to you. But we're going to give you this amount of money. I think that's a smart strategy, because you're going to have depth. You're going to get quality players in all of your sports, and you're going to get linemen that ordinarily wouldn't be able to monetize it at Texas Tech or Notre Dame or Georgia or Alabama or even Ohio State. But they're hearing from Ohio State, you're going to get a salary to come here? Like, it's radical, and it's a vast departure from, the SMU days and the death penalty when you paid play. But that's where this whole thing is going. And to your point of change, in the last 15 years, with the advent of the championship and the whole playoff, where it used to be, imagine in the NFL at the end of the season, 10 people went in a room and voted on who should play for the championship. Give me one team from the AFC and give me one team from the NFC. They're going to play in something we call the Super Bowl. Oh, and we're going to take a month off before we play it. Mm-hmm. This is a plan educators used to use, bro.
Yep.
These are educators. Supposedly the smartest among us came up with that.
Yep.
I think what you're going to see in the not too distant future is a 16-team playoff or a 12-team playoff. This is my proposal would be the Power Fives that win their championship game get an automatic bid. The top 4, and so this would be the only thing that is voted upon. All the actual BCS, if you will, panel would decide
is which of the 5 power conference winners, which 4 of those get first round buys in the 12-team tournament. And so then you take the other 8 and you seed them. That's what the committee does. They seed them 1 to 12, and 5 through 12 play an 8-team tournament where there's 4 quarterfinal games, and the 4 highest seeds host that first round game. Then you take the remaining seeds, and the 1 plays the lowest remaining seed, the 2 plays the next lowest remaining seed, the 3 and the 4. But those 4 teams know that they're going to host a game in 2 weeks. They just don't know yet who they're going to play. So from a scheduling standpoint, you've got plenty of time to put that together. And then once you play those 4 games, now you've got 4 teams left. And you play that as you're playing the national championship now. You have a predetermined site for one of the games, a predetermined site for the other game, and a predetermined site for the championship game. And you can do this without adding any weeks to the regular season. Just take 1 regular season game off the schedule. Instead of these teams playing 12 and 13 games, you play 11 games max and your championship game. And the most games you could play in this tournament is 4. And you're only going to play 4 if one of those lower seeds ends up winning. Like the 4 top seeds, if they win it, they're only going to play 3 extra games, whoever wins it. Now you've added, instead of 3 bake sale games, I call them bake sale games, your semifinal games and your championship game. Those 3 games are where college football is making their huge money.
Yeah.
Instead of only having 3 playoff games, now you have 11. And it's an NFL-style tournament that fans are going to go nuts for.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to look back in the not-too-distant future when something like this is finally adopted and say, God, remember the days when they only had 4? How about the days when they only had 2 and they were voted on? Like, it's just stupid. Nothing should be voted on in sports anymore.
No, and you can go back even further. Think about the times when they actually voted on the national champion.
Yeah.
You had all these publications.
Because the
You had
winner
all
of
these.
the Big 10 would go to the Rose Bowl, and maybe the winner of the Big 12 would go to the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl, and they would never play. And then after all the games, these writers would vote who the championship was. What a fraud.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's extremely stupid. I love the way you laid that out because it makes sense. You get the college football fan that loves the experience of game day in their local area, getting to potentially host a playoff game. You still get to keep these prestigious bowl games, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, all the bowl games people love. You get to keep those venues. You get to keep those.
Yeah.
And that long layoff you mentioned between the end of the conference championship weekend until the time when these schools play their playoff games.
3 or 4 weeks sometimes.
You talk about like player safety and player health. Think about it's your job. If you took a month off, then all of a sudden you got to come back and host your night show at 5 or took a month off from the alternate Cleveland sports show.
Yeah, but in their job, they're taking hits.
Yes, my point exactly.
Car accident every Saturday when you play a college football game. That's what your body feels like. And they're taking a month off and then coming back and playing the most important game of the year with all that rust. It's so stupid. I can't believe that we continue to do it that way. And it's basically the TV networks and the university presidents being afraid of trading the money they know for the unknown of what might become. But all you got to do is look at what happened when they went from a bowl system to the BCS playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the money that added to the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, that number will go up by 3 times because now instead of having 3 valuable TV, the bowl games are pageantry. And we watch them because we gamble on them. But you have 3 hot properties in college football, the semifinal games and the title game. The other ones are fine, but these are the mega, these are approaching $1 billion. If you added 11 to that mix, go ask the NFL. Would you like to play 11 playoff games a year or 3?
Right.
Like, let's not pretend it's not a business and about money. Because when educators don't want to do that, they say, well, we're supposed to be in the business of educating young men. They're college athletes first. They're student athletes. That's the biggest pile of bull I've ever heard in my life. They're making money off these kids. Now these kids can finally monetize it. Let's go to a full-blown playoff system. Quit fooling ourselves. And so the opponents of that say, well, when you do that, it doesn't make every game count. I've got news for you. After week 5, all but 8 teams are eliminated.
Right.
So every game doesn't count after week 5 now. In my system, if you make it to your conference championship, you have a chance to make it to the national playoffs in college football. And in week 9 last year, there were 3 and 4 teams alive for their division titles in just about every one of the major conferences. And look, if you win the MAC and you can, like, if let's say Bowling Green goes 12-0, like they did when Urban Meyer was around, 11-0, they might work their way into the top 12.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do, when that committee ranks the top 4 and they then pick the top 12, Bowling Green might get included in that. As a Bowling Green alum, I would love to see number 5 ranked Cincinnati against Bowling Green for a chance to play Ohio State. Can you imagine what that would do to our state?
It'd be amazing.
Every game counts in my scenario. It's just like in baseball, when you add all these wild cards, the September pennant races now are so much more exciting because instead of the divisional races being the only thing that matter, you've got 9 teams vying for 3 wild cards in each league. That means 18 teams are playing meaningful games in the month of September. That drives television ratings, and television ratings drive revenue.
This has been fun, man. This has been a lot of fun. Got to have you back on the podcast at some point down the road. But I want to end it with this little thought here. Your proposal for the playoff, I love it. You've broken it down. It's well thought out. It makes sense. You haven't once mentioned anything about the weather. And I have heard people that are south of Tennessee. Okay, let's be more specific. People that are in Texas, the Big 12, and people that are in the SEC, they keep talking about, well, why should Alabama have to come up to Columbus or, let's be honest now, Ann Arbor or East Lansing? Or why should they have to come up north to play these football games? You didn't once mention the weather. Why?
Here's the beauty of my plan. The teams from the North and the Midwest have always had an inherent disadvantage with the way our playoffs have been laid out.
Yes.
Where do you go to play bowl games? Pasadena, Miami, Dallas.
Yes.
Phoenix. Why? Well, because if you're in Wisconsin, you want to go to Phoenix in January. If you're in Sandusky, Ohio, you want to go to Pasadena in January, or Miami, or Tampa, or Orlando. But the problem with that is the teams up north built themselves to have conference success, because without conference success, you can't get into the national conversation.
Correct.
So what does the Big Ten look like compared to the SEC? We recruit and develop and coach players to be able to play in poor weather in November. You're going to have to play a snow game. Can you do that? When the teams in Florida, when do they ever have to play a meaningful game where they're at a disadvantage? Or Texas or USC? Never. And you should never have a geographic advantage in sports. One of the things I hate about baseball is the coastal cities and the major metropolitan areas have such a huge advantage because unlike the NFL, there's no salary cap. So these big metropolitan areas with big TV markets can spend more money on their team. Thus, they have a geographic advantage. In college football, the Alabamas of the world, the Clemsons of the world, Miami, Texas, USC, all of the Southern Belt cities, they have an inherent advantage in both it's easier to recruit kids to warm sunshine, and you never have to play meaningful elimination games on a bad track. In my system, it's entirely possible Alabama might have to come to Ohio State for a playoff game, and it might be snowing.
Yeah.
And then see how Alabama feels about having to play in weather that they're not used to.
I love it. I love it. Well thought out. I do think there are feet to this. I do hope the people that, well, whoever's in charge, I know people that might be in charge, but the people that are the decision makers, I hope that they give some great thought to how to expand the playoff, since it's going to happen, on how to make college football a better sport. You want to maximize the dollars? This is a great way to do so. And I'm also glad we can maximize every second we have with you today, Jay, here on the podcast on Locked On Buckeyes. Thank you for coming on. A little plug, if you could, for the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Where can people catch it? And maybe if they're local, where can they catch you on TV at 5 p.m. as well?
So my 5 o'clock show is on WKYC NBC3 here in Cleveland. That goes every day, Monday through Friday, 5 to 6. Thanks for giving me that opportunity. The show is What's New. I love it. We were our first year last year. We were nominated for and won an Emmy in the Midwest region, which is a whole bunch of cities. Yes. We won Best Newscast, and we didn't even exist the year before. So I'm super proud of that. We are in year 2 now. We are currently up for our second Emmy. So we do a fun, good show. It's a different spin on news of the day. It's more conversational. It's less reedy. I'm not wearing a suit and tie, and I'm not reading like Ron Burgundy. It's a fun conversation about the news events of the day. Our stream show, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, there's a variety of different places you can catch it. It's on the WKYC app, streaming digitally from 11 to 1 every day. But the easiest way I tell people, just go to YouTube, type in the search bar, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show will pop up. You can subscribe to our channel. You can hit the notifications bell so you'll be notified at the start of our show every day. You just go to YouTube and you stream it. And the beauty of what we're doing is, yes, we're on from 11 to 1, but unlike your traditional TV content, we don't go away after that. Right. We clip off all of our different topics and segments, and we send those out on social media platforms. It just amplifies our reach. It allows you to get a lot of views and a lot of eyeballs on your product. So you can watch it live every day on YouTube, 11 to 1, or you can just time shift it and watch it whenever you have 2 hours. I think it's mandatory viewing for Cleveland sports fans. I will say this, too. Last week, we had Maurice Clarett in studio for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we talked about everything. I mean, he talked about what happened at Ohio State, what happened in prison, what's happened since he was released from prison. A little tease, he told a story about how Mike Tyson reached out to him and said he wanted to meet him. And when he met him, he said, I credit you for turning my life around because I met you in a party in Hollywood years ago and you were a mess. And I said to myself, if that dude can do it, I can do it. He tells a funny story about how Mike says he was getting ready to go into an orgy and he saw Maurice Clarett telling his story on TV, and he said, you know what? I'm turning my life around right now. Yeah. I'm not going into that orgy. I'm turning over a new leaf right now. And the story was super powerful, but you can go onto our YouTube page, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and go into our past shows, and you'll see the Maurice show. And I'm telling you, once you start watching it, you won't be able to turn it off because he's an incredibly bright and thoughtful young man. He's doing wonderful now. He's a very, very prominent and successful in business. He's got some medical clinics. He's got some surgical clinics. He's doing really, really well. He's a regular on our show. So we've gone out and we've collected a group of folks that really resonate with Cleveland and Ohio sports fans. Brad Sellers is on our show. Brad is a former Ohio State basketball player who played with Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the NBA. He's on our show every Monday and Friday. So we've got a diverse group. We've all come from different decades, different neighborhoods, but we have one thing in common. We're Cleveland sports fans. And it's really kind of the intersection of all of those different backgrounds coming together with one common theme, sports, and Cleveland sports in particular.
I'm so glad you're on the show. I love watching it, and I'm also glad, Jay, you're able to come on Locked On Buckeyes. Hopefully, this isn't your last appearance here. Buckeyes are supposed to have a great time playing football this year, and so I look forward to having you back on. I also look forward to watching the show, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, once again. Jay, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Jay, great to be with you, and we'll see you again.